No, you don't have to die with the most things. It's not the game. It's not how it works. You can't take it with you. And you would be so surprised in what you cherish in giving rather than receiving.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson, and I'm coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio, where I bring you this show every other Monday with fresh stories you've never heard and possibly even some fresh faces you've never seen. So, what I do on the show is I sit down with a guest, I take a deep dive into their lives as we uncover their story, the ups, the downs, and everything in between that makes them who they are. It's a bit of a life podcast. It's a bit of a public journal, a therapy session, maybe. I've been told it feels like a therapy session. And it's all in the goal to shed light on the sides of those people's stories that most often we do not know about. So this week, I have a wonderful freaking episode as I sat down with Jessie, Cale, met him for the very first time, as we covered a lot of what he does and what his journey has been like up to this point. I mean, from making music, which almost led him to being a Disney star, I might add. From a spiritual side, as we talk mindset, healing, energy, and how he came from a religious background and now understanding all of that, to his battles with, depression and the amazing physical transformation that he carried his body through after deciding to make a change. It is seriously an awesome story. It's an incredible story. And of course, there's a ton more to the story that we get into. Jessie is all in all like an amazing person. I'm glad that I now know. He's full of energy, full of ideas, creativity, life, whatever you want to say, and it made for a serious blast of a conversation. So let's just get to it. Here it is. Let's jump in. This is episode 36 of What You Don't Hear. Let's get to know Jessie Cale. Cool. We'll edit all that part out. People can't know that this gear messes up something.
Amazing.
Well, dude,
Are we going?
We got drinks. We got waters. We got all the stuff. The non-alcoholic drinks. I love that.
We're here.
We are set. So let's make it official. Jessie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I really appreciate you being down to do this. This is our very first time meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was saying, we were talking a little bit before we started rolling that I feel like you and I have always been like the classic 1 degree of separation.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we know so many of the same people. I have seen you around in so many different things. I actually think I photographed you live one time a couple years ago.
Fascinating.
I think you were playing for Vespertine.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I shot that show. So it's like we literally have been so close to meeting at all points in time.
You've even stolen my soul.
Exactly.
Amazing.
I captured it in camera.
Yeah.
Now's the time you're like, I don't like my picture being taken. How dare you do that? So then I know that I secretly took your soul in the camera.
I've been perceived.
But yeah,
Amazing.
I'm stoked that you were down to do this, down to meet up.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
I'm genuinely very excited to get to know you for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
Of course, it's because we know so many, running this sort of the same circles. But I feel like you were involved in so many different things in your life. Mm-hmm. And I want to uncover all those things because I know you as a musician and you're also into fitness and you were just telling me some of the things you're going to get into before we started recording. Mm-hmm. So I want to dive into all those things if you're ready for it.
Yeah, I'm so ready.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So honestly, I just kind of want to start it off. Are you from Columbus, Ohio? Born and raised?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Born and raised in the North End, right in between Westerville and Worthington on 161.
Okay.
Growing up, well, actually, I guess I did. I moved there when I was 6, but yeah, grew up here. This is my place.
So you, literally have been here from the start.
Yeah. I did move to California a few times back and forth in Los Angeles in my 20s.
Okay.
But have since then ended up back here both times because of relationships.
I'm imagining that the things that took you to LA were probably a lot of the things you're involved in. Was it music?
It was music.
Okay.
Yeah,
music.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I initially moved to Los Angeles when I was 21. The seed was planted very early though. I had family in Southern California and going to visit them when I was in middle school. It was just like, oh, this felt way more something in line with my life and how I felt inside as a small emotional child,
Right.
rather than, being in college town, Midwest, Ohio State,
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so I had always kind of had it in my books to move to Los Angeles. And then, moving into entertainment and music, it presented that opportunity, and just went there.
So I want to dive into how that small emotional child got into the entertainment world.
Mm-hmm.
Before we do that, though, like I would love to, literally, even for me, not even so much for the listeners, but like I would love for you to lay out like all that you do.
Yeah.
Like right now, like what is it that you? How, maybe even it's such a cliche question, but like how would you describe yourself in anything that you're involved in?
Yeah. Wow. It's really, you're catching me at such a unique time period in my life, because I literally, right now I'm doing absolutely nothing. And that is kind of the goal. I'm trying to make my life so quiet I can hear a pin drop, like really letting my intuition just, smell the most delicate flower of, to give me some semblance of direction coming out of, quarantine, COVID, breakup, turning 30 in quarantine, being back in Ohio, and there's just an amalgamation of experiences and being at this intersection. I was like, I really need direction, and it's not that necessarily I feel lost. There's a big difference between being stable and unstable, but unstable is an opportunity of change, and it's beautiful. It's the journey. It's exciting. So I'm currently in this sort of withholding of my breath, so that I can really just find the little pinhole and just say, that's next. That's what I want, because I'm an obsessive person.
Yeah.
And that's why I've ended up in so many things, because if something gets my attention, I can't just look at a photograph and say, really like that photograph. I say, I need a camera. I need hours of experience photographing. I need a gallery show, and I need to sell art now, and that's just because I'm like this just tidal wave of love, and just like, I'm like, I become a mirror of the experience I have when I look at a beautiful photograph. I become a mirror of an experience I have when I hear a wonderful song. I'm like, I am now a composer of classical music. And then a few minutes later, a dance song comes on, and it's like, I am now world's most DJ. Yeah. And, or I see a piece by Alexander McQueen in fashion, and I'm just like, I am now making all of my emotional statements. My manifesto is how I dress. And, that's me.
Man, okay, so I actually love hearing you describe that, because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm very, very similar.
Yeah.
I think probably because I don't know a better way to describe it, I just sort of explain it as I feel like I have a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's that classic case where it's a blessing because I feel like I can look at anything, and if I feel like, oh, that's even slightly interesting, I'm like, cool, I want to learn it, I want to figure it out, like, I want to help people do it, like, whatever it is. But I also feel like it's a curse, because I'm like, I feel like I can't do honestly what you're doing right now, where you're just sort of slowing down and you're just seeing like what's the next appropriate step that I truly want to make. I feel like I'm not good at doing that. Like, I feel like I haven't, and I'm not even saying I guess necessarily I'm looking even for that right now, but there are times where it's a classic case of I wish I could turn my brain off for just a little bit, because just like you said, and I love the way you described it as like a mirror of what you're seeing, is because I see anyone do anything, and I'm like, I kind of want to be involved in that. Like, what would it be like if I did that? And what's my take on it? And how would I create that? Or how would I invoke that? Even, down to a lot of the work I do, it's like I almost feel like I put myself too much into it, because even if I'm helping someone else with their idea to mold and bring that vision to life, I'm of course seeing myself in that a little bit, of like, not even past just the art form of like, I want it to look cool, so I look cool, but more so like, I want them to feel all the things that this sort of makes me feel like I would feel, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. It's emotionally and intuitively like derived like inspiration, rather than just like kind of a, some kind of objective, like, this is how we will achieve this. You're like, let's give this life, and this is life that I'm experiencing just by being here.
Yes,
You know?
yes,
So,
and that's the excitement a lot of the times. Is like, again, blessing and curse. Like, I feel like I get too involved in things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be so exciting to see happen. Like, I'm that friend where if somebody tells me like, oh, I've got this idea for a brand, or I've got this idea for how I want to use my social media, or whatever it may be, I'm immediately like, here's 1,000 ways we could make that happen. Like, it would be so cool if we did this.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes it can be overbearing.
yeah.
But I have tried to learn how to balance those things of like, all right, I don't need to like attach my heartstrings to like everything.
Yeah.
It's like, what energy does this really need? Especially, being like self-employed and in the world of business and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, I can't attach my emotions to everything that I do.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to do well. I want to give my proper creative energy, but the right amount of creative energy.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you found balance in that?
Oh, I haven't. Yeah. It's funny. Balance is actually such a major theme kind of coming back to me. There's a few things kind of coming back to me this year, and balance is such a massive one. And, being so emotionally anchored and, describing this process of chasing the reflections of my emotional reaction to things, it's a very untethered experience, and that's draining, and it's not possible to build a foundation upon that when it's not kind of placed in a set of boundaries. And me kind of being I've had the privilege and luck in my life to be able to somehow find myself in various industries and places and things that do reflect my passions at the time. The doors, somehow magically open, and not without its hard work to get there, but that being said, this is why I've kind of shed everything in the past few months and said, okay, I want to have a family. I want to be able to build a foundation and still have these very rich emotional experiences, and taking everything I've learned from times where I'm feeling too much and feeling too little, and applying them to this idea of, I don't know, creating a threshold to exist within where I can experience peace rather than being over sensational.
Yeah.
Dude,
okay, I love that. So where does that all start? Like, where and I know I'm like, okay, we're opening up the floodgates here.
Yeah.
But like, again, I via the internet have known you as someone who, again, like, is involved in so many different things, and I can tell that you put your all into those things, and you're constantly creating or connecting with somebody or whatever it is. Where does even that interest in all things even come from? Like, does it start when you were young and you were like, oh my gosh, like, I love creating and I want to do everything? Or was it when you got older, you were like, I don't want to like work a 9 to 5 every day. Like, I need to change that. Like, take me back to that.
Okay. Let me see how well I can articulate this. Because it really is just like, I mean, it was complete, nature and nurture. And I was born into a home with, a very creative and emotional father, and like very, like loving, very strong mother, and very like spiritually rich household. It was like my dad's casting demons out of people in the living room, my mom's healing people in the kitchen, and I'm just walking around, just like hanging out as a toddler, just like, this is my environment, and then they're playing music, and I'm watching. My grandma was super into opera, and I was having a very strong emotional response to watching opera as a child, and and then from there, growing up, and my dad, always playing music, always playing rock music, but I wouldn't respond necessarily to a rock music. He would play this group called Kraftwerk, which is an old, German, like, pioneers of electronic music. They would make a lot of their own synthesizers and stuff like that from the 70s. And for some reason, like, the shapes and the colors and the feeling of electronic sounds would just excite me as a baby. I was just like, this is what I love. And that was always my major response was to electronic stuff. There's actually like my tattoo on here is all like, you know, analog synthesizer imagery tied into a quill and stuff like that. Okay. So yeah, so I started piano when I was 6 years old to grow up and play synthesizers essentially, you know, and all in the context of this very encouraged to like imagination was very heavily encouraged by my dad and, you know, art, and all of these things, gosh, and that was really like what set it up. And I used to like write stories all the time and staple pages together and write like little, you know, superhero books. So it's always, it hasn't necessarily been about making music. It's always, like I said, been storytelling and a reflection of the experience that's exciting me the most.
Yeah.
And it's always been like, I loved sci-fi growing up and I loved electronic music. So I was like, I want to play synthesizer and I want to write like superhero stories, you know?
That is so cool.
It started there, and through kind of, I was homeschooled and then I was in like a private Christian school and then I was back to homeschool, and just the environment just really allowed me this freedom to play in that space. And because of kind of the social limitations of homeschool, I was never gifted the eyes of comparison. I thought we were all doing what we really wanted to do, honestly, until I was probably 18 or 19. And that was when I first like started to realize like, oh, a lot of these people aren't doing what they want to be doing. This is super weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a brutal awakening. As I found myself caught in the middle of like drama for like the first time, and I was like, what is this? I thought we were all just here to like live our best lives and make art and things.
That's
and
amazing.
Stuff.
Okay.
You know, so that's definitely jumping way ahead and along, but that is the beginning. That is the cannonball being loaded.
Yeah. Dude, okay, so first off, there's a lot of things that you said in there that I feel like I'm 100% relating to.
Yeah.
And I also even asked the whole, like, you know, what was growing up like thing, not just so for the sake of us starting our story, but more so I'm always interested, especially when people are creative or really whatever they do as an adult. I'm always wondering like where that stuff started, and was it like, yeah, the household was this, or it was this, or whatever it is, because when we're kids, everybody has an imagination. Yeah, so everybody's gonna maybe draw or color or act like they're making music, or, you know, whatever it is. But I'm always so interested in seeing like, well, when did that like continue to carry? Like, did it fall off at some point and then got brought back up and rediscovered later? But it's always so interesting to me to dive into those things and be like, okay, was it just being creative as a child, or was it like, no, yeah, you were genuinely attached to a lot of these things?
Yeah.
Now, one thing you said in there that I 100% caught my attention that I want to just dig into a little bit. You said spiritual household.
Yeah.
And you said father would be in the living room casting demons
out of people. Yeah.
What is that?
I mean, you know, it was like I was in what was considered like an empowered evangelical home and church. And, you know, it was a lot of the, you know, if you're into kind of Christianity, like the Holy Spirit and gifts of the Spirit and these kind of ideas, you know, speaking in tongues, prophecies, healings, you know, casting demons out of people, you know, miracles, you know, and I was just raised, I didn't have to convince myself later in life that magic was real. I was born into a world of just magic. And, you know, I had an experience when I was 4 years old where I was healed, and that kind of set and it dropped the heaviest anchor into me, saying there is power, there's unseen power, you know. And at that point in time, it was in the context of the Christian God. And since then it has expanded into infinite possibilities. But, you know, there's just been a repetition of kind of this relationship with what some people consider energy, some people consider divine, and that, you know, has just amplified throughout my life. I mean, just like I have some of the funniest, most fun miracle stories that I just love to tell, of just absurd prayers being answered in the most comical ways. And that circles back around to what we were talking about before the mics were on, where I was like, hey, how much do you pay for this space? Because I want to open up a spiritual center.
Right. So I love that that's
full
coming
circle.
back full circle.
Yeah.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because I feel like I never get to like
I would love
hear
to talk about
and
this.
learn this stuff, because I will openly say that like I'm probably not familiar with a lot of what you're talking about. Not so much like, you know, being spiritual or believing in God or whatever. Like I get all that, but like I think even the way that you're describing it is more about like the energy side and the aura side of things. Like so, even just like open up the floodgates. Like I'm sort of just gonna toss the floor to you.
Cool.
Like, what do you see a lot of that as? Like being, you know, growing up in you know, Christian faith, and then what is that like transforming into, like, what do you see that as now? Is it the universe? Is it energy? Like what walk me through that.
Okay. Let me see if I can find an appropriate place to start. You know, like I was saying, like being born in the church and I wasn't just an attendee, I was very heavily involved. You know, my mom was a pastor at the church for a long time. I was, you know, constantly volunteering, it's where I cut my teeth in playing in bands, was being a part of worship teams. And, you know, I'm 1,000% grateful for so much of what I got to experience and like the communal aspect of like the church, where it was just like, wow, like reliability, you know, and consistency and accountability, you know, all of these things that are fantastic, and a lot of people don't experience if they don't seek it out, you know. Which I think is just a robbery, because individualism is so praised now, and everything is so custom tailored to us. Like, I mean, algorithms through every digital landscape you can imagine. It's like we have our own, you know, tailored experience everywhere we go. And we have lost so much tribal neighbor mentality, everything. And that was, you know, one of the big things that was really, you know, intense to witness in the past year is all the ways that people banded together and on polarizing fronts, you know. So it was just like, oh, you know, yeah, anyways, I could go down that way. Anyways, being in the church, it provided this really beautiful experience for me. And I had this, I very often though felt like I was walking around and I was like, I feel like these people are, and I don't mean this in any type of harsh way, but there's something beautiful about the community, but I was very much there for the relationship I had with what I called God, you know, and it was something palpable. It was something tangible. It was something that I felt in my spine and in my heart and in my chest and in my dreams. And when I closed my eyes, it was this, you know, beautiful sensation and this peace and this confidence. And it felt like a dynamic relationship, you know, in the way that you have a relationship with somebody else, but only there was no physical interface. I guess to put it as that, there was no physical representation except for when you experience, you know, God through other people. And that's the idea, I guess, of your namaste and things like that. It's like, I recognize the divine in you and you recognize the divine in me. But anyway, you know, I think it was 25, 26 when I finally just realized, like, I'm going through a divorce with the church. You know, I'm no longer, this is no longer for me. And it's not that I don't think that Jesus is beautiful and I don't think that Jesus is wonderful and all of these, you know, incredible things. But I'm just like, I have experienced incredibly rich, beautiful experiences on my own outside of the church with what I, you know, considered this thing. And within the church, I experienced so much judgment and drama and, you know, gross business and being just very mistreated at various churches. And like, just like, this is so foul, and I just need to get away from here. And I don't agree with a lot of the like politics and things like that. I was just like, I'm going to go have my beautiful space, and it's funny in Christianity, there's so many practices like let's quote unquote wait on the Lord, let's sit quietly, let's worship, let's take communion, and these are all beautiful practices that you see reflected in so many other religions and spiritual practices, because they really are just like a discipline that is almost like a commitment and an act that can stir up, something connected to either divine or energy or a higher self, and I guess this comes back around to what is the context of all of the magic now? And I don't know. And we don't know. And as soon as you say you do know, then you're in for an ass kicking, because we have to assume a posture of being a student of life, because that's one of the most beautiful opportunities of being alive, is this opportunity to learn, to change, to shed, to reflect, to heal, to communicate, to commune, and as soon as you take on I don't know, there's a difference between protection and rejection. I understand protecting your family, but rejecting ideas or anything like that, there's a difference between being strong and being loud. I feel like strength comes from the ground and from the core, and being loud as to frighten somebody away is a very shallow, vapid thing. So anyways, this all comes back to this idea of being a student. I don't know what it is now, and I will say that through a lot of what I have experienced, I don't think it is that I'm a deity. I've narrowed it down. I do think that I think it's in Hinduism or it's like, truth is one. There's like the divine in us, and there's just the all. And it's whatever it is, it's beautiful to participate in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
So what point in time was it when you started to, and obviously we don't have to like pry,
no, please,
too deep, but
please,
like
go deep.
When was it that you started noticing these things in, I'll just say, the church?
Yeah.
And I'm so fascinated that it actually made you believe stronger. Rather than what I feel like that stuff does to a lot of people is just pushes them away. Where they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that like this is how this really is, or this is how these people act. And if that's linked to this, then I want no part of it. Like, that's really interesting to me that you were like, I'm going to go on my own self journey to see how I associate with this, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And what it does for me and what I can then do for other people.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm going to leave like this version of it or leave it behind or whatever it is. But you didn't do I feel like it's a classic step just to be like, no, I grew up in a freaking heavily Christian environment. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say the association of God and the church is a disservice to God, or whatever it is. And, not in all cases, absolutely not in all cases. In no way am I saying that. I have some of the most beautiful memories, friends, and so much of that from that time period. But I think it was that my relationship with God wasn't congruent to my relationship with the church. It was very much like I was there to participate and be in community, and then I was almost in prayer and in the presence of God at all other times. Still, I took it with me outside of the church and things like that. And it was always like a journey of discovery and asking questions constantly. I think it was, I had some really not great experiences at a church here in Columbus. That I was playing keyboards at for a little bit. And I think that was when I just realized I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop going to church. But then I ended up at another church that was, it was incredibly redeeming for my last stint, and absolutely beautiful and wonderful. But I was still kind of, I had set my sails out, and I was just like, I'm going to go through this incredibly great grieving and mourning of my foundation that is Christianity. And it was very hard for a few years, It was like riddled with unlearning shame, unlearning, just this fear of the Lord and all of these things that were really drilled into, especially being raised a Christian, And wow, I mean, going through that, I have such a much more beautiful idea and understanding of Jesus now, in particular, especially, pertaining to coming out of Christianity. I'm like, oh, incredible. I'm like, I'm so much more in love with this, and this is so special, and what an example, what a incredible story, rather than like, here is this absolutely unattainable, deity that exists in the story, and you got to do your best to be just like it. And you're like, but I'm not God. And it's like, you don't gotta be, all you gotta do is just have an understanding that we're all human and love each other and really humble your ass, and not humble as in like say you are less, but humble as in, back to what I was saying, assume a posture of a student. Be willing to learn, be willing to be active in your life, and be willing to give energy to people,
Yes.
In understanding that it will come back to you because it's a flow, and people get so protective. And this is, this again goes back to the conversation on individualism. Like, everybody's just building their walls all around themselves, and it's just starving them in subconscious, empirical ways. So
yeah. Well, and I might deviate the conversation here because I can't top your explanations of all that stuff, so I'm not even going to try. But the way that I feel like I can compare to a little bit of at least the individualism side or the separation side is like, in the last couple of years, obviously doing a podcast helps, me evaluate these things and shows me that I love conversation with people. But in the last few years, I even realized that like the amount of genuine like energy that conversing with people gives me.
Yeah.
It's not just like only the act of creating or only the act of doing something with somebody.
Yeah.
It's just the conversation to where like I've been able to identify like if I'm feeling down or if I'm, feeling like depressed or whatever it is, and I'm just like super low on energy, I've found like a hack for myself is to like just push myself even if I don't really feel like it. I know the result that I'll get is to push for like a meeting or a conversation with somebody or whatever it may be, because I know that in that conversation I genuinely will be energized from that conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
And at the end of that, I'll be out of my funk. Like, I'm not saying permanently and it's some like amazing, like I never feel sad again, obviously.
Yeah.
But like that was something that I identified in the last few years is the genuine power and energy that I get from conversing and connecting with people. And it's not just like, let's talk about the weather or let's talk about whatever. Like, and of course, there's another cheat code to do a podcast. So I can sit and be like, anybody I want to meet, hopefully I can get them on and we can talk about everything.
Yeah.
So of course, a bit of a cheat code there. But that was something that even I identified is like, man, like, and not that I was trying to separate myself from people or whatever. I am like, I think, pretty naturally introverted, even though I love doing things and talking to people and all that sort of stuff and connecting. I'm never the one that's like, I want to go do the thing. But once I do the thing and I connect with the people, I'm like, this is incredible. Like, and once I'm there, I'm the person who doesn't shut up.
Yeah.
I'm the person who's like, let's talk about everything. Like, I know you're here for a different reason, but let's talk about your goals and your dreams. Like, what do you think? So that was even something I identified of like, man, like when I am feeling separated from people, and just scrolling through social media or whatever, and especially last year is a huge case of that, of genuinely having to be separated from people.
Yeah.
It was my again, hack, I guess, for lack of a better term, for last year was like, I would make sure that I would have at minimum just one Zoom call a week.
Yeah.
And not like to talk about business or anything like that, because those happen, those are meetings, but just a chat with somebody. Maybe somebody that I had never talked to before, like just to like, hey, let's just chat and get to know each other, or somebody that I wanted to catch up with, because I was like, I'm not getting the human interaction, and I know the way that makes me feel. I know what I get from conversation with people.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've identified that as like, okay, how can I harness that power now? You know what I mean? And continue to connect with people and all those sorts of things. Now, enough about me. I want to dive back into you.
Yeah.
So growing up, you mentioned like homeschool and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time, like, did you ever have like a battle between like, oh my gosh, I'm going to this school now and I was homeschooled? Or the biggest thing I guess that I want to get to is you mentioned that I think it was like 18 or 19, you said you kind of identified like, oh wait, not everybody is like super stoked on things, and a lot of people don't like doing what they're. So walk me through that time frame of going from like being homeschooled and your experiences there, maybe even the experience with the Christian school that you went to.
Okay.
But then trailing into the real world with that experience. Like,
yeah. Oh man. Okay. I do want to come back and talk about your discovery of being energized through conversations and all of that.
Which, hey,
maybe we'll come back around later.
Yeah, if you want to dive into that right now, listen, you can steer the boat. I'm just gonna keep deterring us from all these different trail offs and everything. And
this is something that has been a major practice and challenge for myself. Is I was, blessed with this, born with this blessing and curse of excitability and curiosity. And those, I look at fear in the face, and if you can turn fear into a curiosity, then you are so powerful. And you're just like, instead of being afraid of a situation, you can be curious about the outcome and how you will react in the moment and what will take place. It's eliminating the infinite possibilities that will just destroy your overactive imagination, and then excitability is just like, I'm just a deep lover of things, from a piece of dollar chocolate pie from Kroger, all the way to just like a sunset on Mount Fuji in Japan. Like there is just something exciting about each thing, and I was driven with this excitability and curiosity as a child. And I'm so grateful for that, because it was a major form of protection in my life, because that is something that I now recognize as being very precious. I was like, that's very precious, and that allowed me to kind of bloom and grow into the person that I am today, that is eccentric in confident ways, and observant of these relationships with self and ego and all that has kind of taken place since that childhood, and how to kind of identify healthy, unhealthy, reactions, etc., that kind of thing. So going back to going from homeschool into private school, I was nervous, but I had that jet fuel of excitability and curiosity. And, in sixth grade, my first year in my private school, I met some people that are some of my best friends to this day, actually. In 2016, I started a poetry publishing company with my friend Ashley Dunn, and she was, one of the first people I met when I went to my school, so it's fantastic. And being there, it was, an extension of the Christian environment that I was already in on the weekends. But this one was a little bit more conservative than I was used to. In fact, during my time there, I worked hard, and I loved being a student, and God, I loved like math and stuff like that. I was that kid. By a first day of my, so if I had an autobiography, I'll explain this. And I don't know if you cuss on this podcast, you can beep it out. But
yeah, no, say whatever you want to say.
So if I had a biography explaining kind of this part of my life, it would be called Ass and Titties Changed My Life. And that is because this is the story. First day of my sophomore year. I'm like I said, excitable. I talk with my hands a lot. And I'm sitting at lunch and I fling my arm through the air and I end up knocking this drink over. And this kid sitting across from me changed my life in this moment. He just starts making fun of me for knocking over this drink. And I just look at him. I was like, hey, man, don't be an ass. And I feel these like claws, these talons come down on my shoulders, and it's the like lunch monitor. And she just whispers into my ear, like, you know, this sinister voice, like, go to the principal's office. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. What did I do? I walk in, and the principal doesn't let me talk for the first few minutes that I'm in there. He's explaining to me that I had a highlight in my hair, and I had shaggy hair. I had a blonde streak. You know, I was a cool kid, whatever. And he's explaining to me, and he said these exact words. He said, you know, your hair says to the student body that you do drugs, you drink, and you are involved in premarital sex. And I laughed. I told him I can get a haircut and I can dye my hair. But the reason I'm in the office is because I said the A word at lunch. And, you know, he explained to me, he was like, oh, well, you know, Jesus wrote one of those in the Bible, but I've got to suspend you. That's just the rules. And I was like, cool. So I unenrolled immediately. I was just like, I don't want to go to a school where, you know, they can't practice, quote unquote, the grace of God with a child who said the word ass at lunch on the first day of his sophomore year of school because a kid was being a genuine asshole to him, you know? And I was just like, okay, I don't want to be here. And that was, the timing of that was absolutely divine because I had my first solo experimental electronic music performance at a bar that weekend. I was at that point in time, I had, you know, released like a tape and a burned CD that I was trying to hustle at church and at school all the time. And this was my second album. I was 15. I made all my merch by hand and played a little synthesizer, and it was all experimental, weird electronic pop. And, you know, dressed like a clown that fell through Delia's, and, you know, and because I was now relieved of my, you know, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. school and was now doing online school, I was like, I'm going to start doing music all the time. And it was just all I did. And that set me up for what eventually became my professional career, you know. So thanks to the word ass, and that led to that. And, you know, I like basically did that for a few years, recorded my own stuff. It was all weird experimental electronic pop, and I had a blast, you know, performing it around town, and, you know, got to play at a music festival in Iceland when I was 18, which was a total dream because Iceland's, you know, it's Iceland, you know, it's Sigur Rós and Björk and all that. And then I became this Christian rapper's keyboard player, and that presented an opportunity to write comedy songs for this YouTube channel called Your Favorite Martian. And they were like, hey, you should try out for this producing and writing for this channel. And so I wrote a song called Tiggle Bitties. And so I wrote it, recorded it, sent it to them. They re-recorded the vocals with the lead singer of the band. They put it out. And at that point in time, this was 2011. This was a lot. It got 1.7 million views in the first, like, 24 hours, which that was old school YouTube, so that was like massive. And they were like, wow, great job, do it again. So I wrote this song about video games. It performed really well, and then they were like, move to LA, we're going to give you a music studio, we're going to give you a house by the beach, and, you know, this is now your life. So,
dude,
yeah, wild.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
Ass and Titties changed my life. It's been a very brief
Maybe
period.
we'll just title the podcast episode that. But, I don't know. Listen to find out what happened.
Yeah, seriously.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot right there that I want to dive into. One of the biggest things that I do want us to circle back around to was in the midst of all that, you're starting to do music and all that sort of stuff. Like, when was the transition from being the homeschool kid, or, well, obviously you talked about how you did the you know, transition out of the private school.
Yeah.
But when was that step, I guess, quote unquote, into the real world?
Yeah.
If you want to frame it that way, of like, because I'm so fascinated by the idea of you said this earlier when you said that you were being introduced to the way other people lived their lives.
Yeah.
And you were kind of taken aback by that.
Yeah.
Or so it seemed.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So walk me through that time frame, like, because it sounds like you are doing all these musical endeavors. I mean, you're doing them on your own, which is wild at like 15 to even have the mindset to like not just want to make music, but to then be like, I'm going to record my music, I'm going to make albums, I'm going to hand make my merch, and to be playing shows around town. Like that is wild to hear.
Yeah.
So before I throw 1,000 things at you that I want you to talk about, the biggest thing is that when you, what would you qualify as like maybe your first step into like the real world, where you're realizing the way that other people live their lives are maybe a little bit different than the way that you were?
Oh man, it was probably like, I did, all of my art was a genuine expression until I was probably about 18. And that's when I realized I could make money doing this. That's when I would kind of went, oh, if I just stopped making aggressively strange music and started making some mildly structured pop songs, like I could do this for a living, And I had an experience when I was 14 years old that really teed this up for me. I got a phone call one day. It was so random. It was from somebody at Disney, and they were like, we want you to be, a Disney actor and Disney music artist, kind of like, and they used Hannah Montana as an example kind of thing. They were like, this is what we want you to do. And, they called me back multiple times, and I recorded some demos and, sent them videos of me singing and playing piano and of my weird electronic music and all this stuff. And they were like, cool, this is great. And, continued this conversation with me. And then I don't know how this was overlooked, but at one point they were like, wait, how tall are you? And I was like, oh, I'm 6'1", 6'2". And they were like, oh, you are way too tall to do this. I'm so sorry. And just like disappeared. But that like kind of planted this like seed, it's like challenge of just like, wait, I do want to be an entertainer, and that, took a while to come to this place, like I said, when I was 18, where I was like, I'm going to filter my art and make it more commercial, and I started this band called Fantastic to kind of do just that. And, and it just started this like separation of my relationship with music that only progressed, where it was just like music became a mode of survival rather than a mode of expression, and I still had my side projects where I would just wail and cry on the piano and all of this, deeply emotional, flashcards of the state of my being. But like, that was when I started, playing, festivals and, bigger shows where it was like, oh, this is competitive. This is business. This is, seeing that like, oh no, everybody is doing this. This is calculated. This is, the magic of it all was being demystified, essentially. I was like, oh, these chord structures trigger these emotional responses. Every album needs this. Every, band needs that. Every brand needs this, just really understanding that. And, growing up, like, born in the MySpace era, like we were presented with this like the beginning of commodifying self, and just being like, cool. So we all learned how to start to brand ourselves and that kind of thing. And it only just perpetuated what became like the at-home artist business that is what is oversaturating the market today, Anybody and everybody can throw money at an Instagram ad, start an Instagram account, record something free on GarageBand, and all of a sudden, like, you're legit. You got a a page that people can find. You got stuff on Spotify, and you got an Instagram, and there you are. You can buy some print-on-demand merch, and I've got my page set up in 12 hours, and here we are. It's wild. Yeah, just like the machine of it all now.
Now, when you were finding those things out, uncovering those things of like, okay, this thing that I love to just create can kind of be monetized and turned into business and all that sort of stuff. It sounds like you did kind of dive into that and were like, okay, I can kind of do this. Now, when you were doing that, and you're getting freaking calls from Disney and I mean, I don't know how far we're jumping ahead or back or if we passed it already, the whole like, hey, move out to LA and write music and all this sort of stuff. Did you ever feel like challenged during that time of like, am I actually going against what I believe music is to me? Or were you just like, yo, this is sick. Like, look at all this opportunity showing up. Like,
1,000%.
Okay.
1,000%. I feel like it was almost like cheating on a lover and like cheating on a one true love. It was it was an ultimate betrayal, and I always told myself I'll come back for you, and I never did, and it has become something that like continuously haunts me.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. And because it became relentless, the association of music and survival, because it was like, oh no, this is like, if I want to eat, I have to sit down and I have to produce and I have to create. And then as soon as I want to express, I have to sit in the same chair at the same desk in the same office and use the same tools to now express. And that just was not a recipe for a healthy relationship with music, So
yeah, that's really interesting to hear, honestly, because I from the outside, again, I've known you through the internet forever, which what is knowing somebody through the internet? Totally. I get that, but seeing you be a part of so many different musical creations and endeavors and all this sort of stuff, I would have totally assumed that you were like, and not to say that you dislike what you've done, like clearly you do, but to hear you be like, I kind of never went back to that quote unquote one true love, first true love of music. That's actually really interesting to hear. And I think even just kind of spilling this out of my brain, what I felt like you were going to explain to me, I felt like you were going to find your way back to music in your own way. And maybe you did, and you just haven't explained it yet. But I feel like you were going to find your way back to music the same way you found your way back to like faith or because to me, I'm like, I'm hearing these mirroring things in this story of like, okay, growing up in the church and then finding out, wait, this actually isn't a way that I kind of like to feel this. So I'm going to take my way of doing it and bring it back to like the way that I like it. And honestly, kind of I felt like you were doing that or were going to do that with music. At least that's the way that the story felt like it was playing out, is that it becomes this kind of, machine of a thing where then you're like, wait, this isn't how I experience music.
Yes.
Then you kind of like depart, quote unquote, and find your own way of doing that. Did that ever pop up, or are you literally like, man, like, I don't know? Like,
no, we're in that right now.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And like I said, it's like wanting to open the spiritual center. Part of that is doing sound healing. And it's like, I had a band for a long time, and a lot of my favorite music has always been instrumental, very ethereal, cinematic, commanding, meditative atmospheres, just like that, and beautiful. And I saw when I did that as a form of worship, and then I stopped worshiping. And that was where my relationship with music continued. I had a band from age 18 through about 24, 25 that was called Kale, and that was where my love of music in a healthy way did operate, because I had no expectations. It was simply the birth and the love. It was not, I didn't put my energy into it because I expected a byproduct. I was like, cool, I have this song, but now I also have, a tour date and merchandise. It's like, instead of just being at home with like, no, I'm going to, I think a lot of us get really pent up with potential energy. And for a lot of creatives, that potential energy is expressed as art. And when it doesn't come out, it can be very frustrating.
Yes.
It's literally like the release of potential energy. You look at a bow and arrow. A bow has potential energy when you pull it back, and you have to release to express that potential energy. And we are the same way. We have potential energy because we get so full of ideas and emotions. We have to release, and a lot of it's through the expression of art. So coming back around to, like you were saying, it's like I see these story arcs and I'm expecting the same story arc in your faith as to take place in your music. And I think I'm in that right now. And I feel really, that's part of my silence right now that I'm in my life is like, okay, I was just in Tulum, Mexico for about 2 weeks. And like I said, I grew up loving electronic music. Dance music has always been just like, whew, there's dance music on, no matter how inappropriate I am dancing. Like I am just, I'd be just in the back of a funeral and I'm just like, oh no, somebody like turn that dance music off. I can't stop dancing. So it's, and that I think has the same kind of meditative, like, trance qualities that like a lot of atmospheric music does. I think there's definitely a correlation between what they're both tapping into. So I'm really trying to see, like, I think this is where I want to go back to this place of creating dance music and creating, essentially worship and meditative atmospheres, so, but we'll see. I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm waiting. Like I said, I want to smell and see just the faintest thing as I clear the space for myself in life. So,
well, me asking about those story arcs, I spoiled the ending of the story where you reveal like, and this is how I feel about music now.
No. I'm actually glad you pointed that out to me because I'm currently, like this actually circles back around to you talking about loving to, when you're feeling depressed, have a conversation with somebody, because we get so imprisoned in just the turmoil of our internal selves when we're alone all the time. The internal self is, it is everything. It's the palette of all our creation. So there's very beautiful, wonderful, serene things and beautiful memories, but there is also just like absolute damnation in there. And when you lose perspective on it, and you get stuck in there, then it's torture and you can find yourself very depressed. And when you go, and it is almost like a subconsciously selfish thing, when you go and converse with somebody, it pulls you out of your head and it gives you some perspective. And, it really makes things smaller and feel easier and less heavy, and it's wonderful. Do you know your Myers-Briggs? I would assume you're like an INFP.
So I have done that, but I literally do not remember what it was.
I'd be fascinated to know. But yeah, so having this conversation, like you were saying, it's like I wake up every morning, and since I've been back from Mexico, it's the looming is still in my home of what is next. And I'm, you pointing out this story arc that's reflective of my relationship with religion and faith and the divine and or energy or the matrix or whatever it is, I'm like, oh no, yes, this is reflective. I do see this taking place. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I love that then. I'm glad I brought that up because like you said, like I said, when you were explaining that, I was like, all right, I'm seeing some parallels here. And I was wondering like when we were going to get to that, but here we are. So let's dive back into like the music thing here.
Yeah.
It is something that fascinates me is I feel like you have, I mean, even the fact that you're like, yeah, Disney called.
Yeah.
Do you think that is from, like, were you doing something at that point in time where you were just like, yeah, my music is everywhere, I'm sending emails, I'm like doing all this stuff? Or is it like, and maybe this is a totally left field thing of me to wonder, but like, would you associate it with like an energy thing? Like kind of the classic, like if you put out, you will receive what you want or deserve or what you're looking for without having to actually try and pick it out. Like, what do you think that was for you, like during those times of, because you end up, and I want to catch back up to this and hear more about it, the whole like, hey, come move to LA and make music for like, where do you think those opportunities are coming from? Or are you literally like, dude, I was emailing a bunch of people?
No, it is, it's, I'm glad that you frame it with the potential of path of conversation. It's like, do you think this was God? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Because I was a small child in the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio, going to a private school, and of course I, after the conversation, could trace it back to how they found me, but like the odds are so funny. But ever since I was born, and I don't want this to sound arrogant because a lot of people are born feeling this way and do find their way through this experience, but I was born with like a knowing and a feeling of just like there is some very dynamic peaks and valleys to come in my life that will take me to places that are greater, that are not normal, that are not just going to the end of my street. I will have some very intense experiences, and I'm going to do some very big things,
Yeah.
And that was ever since I was a little kid. I felt that way. So I wasn't even surprised when I was excited, but I was like, this is, this feels like it's in step with my life when I got that phone call. And I traced it back to I dated a girl when I was like 11 whose mom had a friend, and I think they just like mentioned me in a conversation somewhere in LA, and they were like, let's call him like years later. Yeah. And sure enough, and it was interesting because every 6 months after that, there was like a strange phone call, and some odd opportunity, and it almost always fell through, but that's been one of the big things now at age 31, looking back at my life. Even, the project I moved to California to work on, we were working on an album, and, I was co-producing with with like a hero of mine, the Dust Brothers. They had produced like Beastie Boys' Beck, the Fight Club soundtrack, like very, DJ and kind of big beat stuff in the late 90s. Which I grew up loving, your Fatboy Slim, Chemical Brothers, Crystal Method, like that kind of stuff. And I'm working, I'm co-producing an album with these guys. Jonathan Davis from Korn is on the album. Snoop Dogg's on the album. Miley Cyrus is on the album. Robin's on the album. Mark Hamill from Star Wars is on the album. Like, one of the dudes from System of a Down was in there. Like, I think we were like Mike Shinoda was going to be involved. I forget. It was like one of the Linkin Park guys. And it's just like, I'm just like, this is awesome, and sure enough, we get to the final stages of the album, and there was I don't know how much legally I can talk about this, but there was an intellectual property dispute that took place between the two owners of the band IP, and one was trying to like strong arm essentially a deal, and everything was put on hold in perpetuity, and one day you're at the studio, and the next day you're getting ready to go to the studio, and you get a phone call like, hey, we're not recording today. And that was it. And it was just,
or ever again.
Yeah, it was just over. And the album never came out, never saw that. I, essentially lost the job I had moved there for, but a lot of other, I was working with a ton of YouTube channels at that point in time. So it was like, they all kind of came along. They were like, yo, man, holy shit, heard about your channel. Come work with us and blah, blah, blah. But then I was like, I had been in a long distance relationship. I was like, I'm just going to go home. I'm pretty sad.
Yeah. Okay. So where did the YouTube thing come from? Is that just from, again, your music and creation is out there and it's attracting those things? Because, I know you wrote the one that got millions of views and all this sort of stuff. Is that kind of the trickle-down effect?
That was essentially the studio I moved to work in LA was all working with YouTubers. It was pre-influencer influencers.
Okay.
And it was just huge production house, and I had my own music studio over near Venice, California, and it was a wild time. It was like the wild west of the internet and in social media, and it was like, this is actually hilarious. It set me up for what became another big part of my job later. Was I got to be in a lot of the early conversations with brands and influencers. Like Walmart would walk in with $200,000 and be like, hi, we're Walmart. You have a big channel. We want you to talk about Walmart. We don't know what to do, but here's all this cash. Talk about Walmart. And so the person would be like, Go to Walmart. Okay. Anyways, today on my vlog, I'm in New York or whatever, Yeah. And it was just like no rules, no parameters. And now it's like influencer marketing is just like so refined, where it's just like you have to say the brand within 30 seconds. You have to tag the partner. You have to do this. You got to do this. You got to track these metrics, the ROI, like, what's the key performance indicator on this, campaign. This became a huge part of my life, was being in these conversations. And then later setting up, I actually won a Google Best in Class marketing award because me and two of my friends created a fake marketing company, essentially got a $600,000 marketing job, put on a campaign, and just killed it. And then we just like totally just like, we're like, okay, we're done with this. just totally fucking around.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I want to know where else we're going.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you can share.
Right.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Create a fake marketing company?
Yeah. Well, it was essentially, we came alongside of an already established agency, and we were like, well, hire us for this job. We're called this, and this is what we do. And they were like, okay. And it was so fun. I remember drinking a bunch of wine and creating this whole library of influencer marketing terms, and creating like, it's like, okay, this is what this means. This is what this means. We're talking about like our hero platform and our rake versus comb and all of these like marketing strategies, blah, blah. And some of them, they still get used in meetings today. It was just like, I was drunk in a hotel,
That is wild.
just like making up these things. And we put them into our pitch deck, and it became a thing.
That's wild.
Yeah. It's super funny and fun. And, and that all ties back to, this is a funny story I could trace it back to. I started a PayPal account when I was 15 and started selling like t-shirts and sending out manila envelopes. And I sent one to MTV, and, this guy looked at it, saw it was from Columbus, Ohio, and MTV bought one of my t-shirts. He was the producer of MTV News. And he sent me a picture of him with the MTV News logo. I'm like 15 years old. I get this thing. I was like, sweet, MTV has a Kale shirt. That was my like performance name. Fast forward 10 years. That's the guy I created this fake company with.
Wow.
Dude. It's just absolutely absurd. And so it's like,
that's insane.
Yeah. Life has been hysterical.
That is so cool.
Yeah, life is hysterical. But like I was saying, it's like, nothing's ever totally blown up and worked out. And I have it's a hard relationship with that, because obviously it's frustrating, but also I absolutely love who I've become in the process. And I'm just like, wow, I would have been robbed of so much character, so much understanding, so much humility, so many growing experiences. I would probably just be a shit. Just shit of a person if this project when I was 23 had taken off, if that had worked out, if I wouldn't have gone through all of these hardships and had these incredibly dynamic professional experiences in marketing. And I was the manager of the world record bench press power lifter for like the past year. Like, I've just had an odd professional career. And
wow,
it's so much more entertaining than having one thing really just blow up. So, and it's fun.
Well, I feel like that helps feed into the way that you're, interested in so many things. In the same way that I have always said, like, so many people ask me, like, well, what is it really that you want to do? What's the thing? And my answer, whether it's so bland or cliche or sounds fake or whatever, I'm always like, listen, like, if one of the tens of 20s things that I do, if one of them works, that's just gonna maybe hopefully help me do the rest of them and then do more new things. I'm not just gonna hang my hat on like, oh cool, I started directing this huge movie and great, like I'm getting to tell my stories and getting to be a real filmmaker. And that's it. Nope. I'm going to be like, cool, I'm going to still do this podcast and I'm going to still go do this thing. And then just for fun, start an indie record label if those still exist. Like, just like, I want the ability to do as many things as possible. And that's like, it's interesting to hear your perspective of like getting all these like wild opportunities and wild things popping up, but you're still satisfied in the end that something didn't blow up and make you the most famous millionaire in the world. You're still like, one, it shaped me into who I am, but I also feel like that does feed into the nature of I'm interested in so many different things.
Yeah.
I feel like there's also a part of you that even, and obviously you know you better than I know you, but I also feel like maybe if one thing really did blow up, I almost feel like this kind of arc that we keep coming back to with things, I almost feel like you still would have found your way back into like, yeah, but I want to do all of this.
Yeah.
Still.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the little bit that I've gotten to know you just in like the hour that we've been chatting so far, I get that sense that you still would have found your way back to like, no, yeah, I'm going to do just a bunch of things like all the time.
Yeah.
So in the midst of that, is it just so much fun and silliness that you're just like, this is awesome? Or are there any points in time there where you're like, am I losing track of like what I'm really wanting to be doing? Or walk me through that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so this is where we can like, it has been a lot of like excitement, excitable, spicy flavors and cinnamon and sugar and all that. I've been like brutally depressed since I was 13.
Okay. All right.
You know, and that as an ingredient to the cocktail of every story that I've been telling so far. I mean, that I feel like that comes with being an emotionally intuitive kind of type. You know, it's a blessing and a curse having the gaping sensitivity. You know, and you know, finding out what needs to take place to satisfy that depression has been a major part of my life and story. You know, this is actually what led me to fitness, and this will circle back around to, you know, like, what am I supposed to be doing, and am I living, you know, out of ego or out of self, or have I identified like my values in an honest way, and is what I'm doing on a daily basis, you know, in line with that. But you know, being very depressed, it did stifle motivation frequently, you know, and I can say that, like, you know, it wasn't always that things never worked out. It was sometimes that I got incredibly depressed and incredibly anxious and suicidal, and or, you know, was drinking too much. That was a huge thing in my life. I was such a good kid growing up, sweet little moral boy. And then I, you know, got kind of invited into environments when I was like 19, 20, 21 that started to really propel me into addictive consumption of alcohol, you know. And when I was out in LA, like working a lot, I had, you know, being out of Ohio, out of my parents' home and all of this stuff, I had so many things start to surface, you know, and your early 20s and late teens and all that is when you start to identify all the ways that the way your parents raised you affect you, you know, and all of that kind of stuff. You're like, oh, wait, oh, I sound like my dad, or oh no, that's something my mom would do. And, you know, oh, I can't believe because of this, I am like this, and damn it, trauma, etc., you know. But, you know, I realized it's like, oh, I've had body dysmorphia and been incredibly insecure my whole life. And moving to LA, I was drinking a lot and I was not eating at all. And, you know, I just became such a disfigured version of myself while I was there, but also like propelling my creative career in leaps and bounds. And, you know, it was such a fascinating duality. It was just we were talking about balance earlier. It's like I had one end of the teeter-totter dipping into the depths of hell, and the other one just gracing the sun in heaven. You know, it was just this horrific picture of lack of balance.
Right.
And, you know, that addictive nature I had observed in other areas of my life previously. You know, I was a smoker for a long time, and binge eating and crash dieting back and forth, just trying to find the answer, of like, I really want to be satisfied and I don't know what it is, but I'm not happy. And this all eventually leads back to it now again with like the spiritual center and stuff like this. Like this has become such a massive part of my journey. But getting to age 25, I was fairly defeated and drinking so much. And every time I went to the bar, I felt like I was cheersing myself goodbye, and a intense act of self-loathing, and put on a bunch of weight, and I was done, man. I was gone. And I woke up one morning after trying to give myself the New Year's resolution of like, I'm going to quit drinking. Didn't work out. Wake up to a origamied pizza box in my trash can, and a Magnum bottle of wine, and a receipt from a bar, and a pack of cigarettes, and a bag of Taco Bell, all just crammed in my trash can. I was like, who is this person? Because this is not me. And I walk upstairs and I catch myself in the mirror, and I'm looking myself in the eyes, and I just have this shedding, this breakthrough, and I'm just looking at myself in the eyes in the mirror, and I'm just like, that person that I'm looking at right now is the person that all my friends have loved, that my parents have loved. Every time I've been hugged by a lover, it's been this body. Every time I've witnessed art, it's been through these eyes. It's been in this heart. It's been this sensation down my spine. This being, this is me. And I am destroying this person. I have a broken relationship with this person. I would drive across the country and swim across the sea to save somebody's life that was my friend. But goddamn, I can't seem to put down a bottle for myself. It took nothing, and I recognized I didn't give myself any patience, forgiveness, or grace. And I adopted these qualities and changed my relationship with self that day. And I was gluten, dairy, caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol-free for a year and a half after that. I became obsessed with smoothies and exercise, and, I wrote my first book and started a business, and wow, my relationship with self began to heal. And it was incredible watching the tethering of mental, physical, and spiritual. It was like as soon as I started to pick myself up physically, in tandem came my mental health, started to get picked right up. And then all of a sudden, these gateways to just back into that spiritual space of just this romance with the divine. Oh, it was like a blooming garden that I was just resting in. It was so potent and beautiful, Yeah. And that then started to just build in like this reminder of what I loved about being in church was service. I love serving people. That's part of my love language. And I was like, oh man, I want to help people, and the evolution has come back to, in all of these things. Am I doing what I love? And it's always been faced with that, like, okay, well, who am I? What are my values? And where am I? And what are my fears? And how am I going to survive? And all of this stuff. So, no, I haven't always felt like I'm doing what I love, but part of the journey is discovering what you love now and not necessarily what you remember loving,
Yeah.
Because it changes, and it's okay to change, and you don't have to become indebted to trauma or sensations of the past. That's a huge thing. We tether ourselves so heavily to things in our past, because we are afraid if we let go of them, they lose their value and they lose their place in the story, especially something traumatic. We're afraid to let go of that, because as soon as we heal from it and move on, we can no longer use it as a crutch or something like that. It's hard work and a lot of responsibility. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if that kind of circles back around in a big way.
Yes, no.
Yeah.
And I'm actually so glad you brought up the fitness stuff, because clearly I wanted to get to that.
Yeah.
But, so, let's even dive into that even more, because I feel like that's such an easy and relatable thing with so many people.
For sure.
Is the act of not physically taking care of yourself and how that immediately correlates to your mental health and how you feel with anything you're doing. Whether
Absolutely.
it's energy of thinking, anything, creating anything, doing your job, whatever it is. So like, I mean, you told most of the story.
Yeah.
But I do want to hear even more of your fitness journey because I know that you're just like on it now.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
are just on it. So
Yeah.
what was it like to, you made that switch.
Mm-hmm.
You saw yourself in the mirror and you were like, I need to take care of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it just an instant kick into like, boom, I've got this.
Yeah.
And like, we're just going to grow from here.
Yeah,
and did you see kind of everything then, and you did kind of already say this, but like everything then kind of rise around you where you're like, I'm making clearer decisions or I'm feeling a lot better about like my path in life now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hell no, it wasn't instant at all. It was, and this is a great reminder for me too, because when it comes to communicating this time period and the lessons learned, it really is like, you got to be in love with the present. You got to be present. You got to be here and now. I quit drinking in January of 2016, and it wasn't until March that I actually had the courage to even drive to the gym. I, spent 2 months paying for the gym, but not going. In those 2 months, though, I had changed my diet and lost 20 pounds and started a Snapchat channel where I was making smoothies every day and just being a total goofball. And that channel actually ended up blowing up to be about 300,000 eyeballs a month. And I started this thing called the Smoothie Revolution. And I had my own smoothie flavor here in the Midwest. And like $1 of it went towards mental health, research and whole damn thing. But getting into the fitness journey, it was like, it took a lot of, like I said, like being present, being humble, being grateful, and creating a beautiful narrative for what was taking place. Because the first time I went to the gym, I parked in the parking lot. I got so anxious, I turned around and went home and immediately Googled first time at gym anxiety and like read a bunch of blogs, watched a bunch of videos of like, hey, don't be nervous at the gym. And like, it took hand holding through, YouTube videos and blogs in order just to have the courage to walk in there. I'll never forget this. The first time I'm in the gym, I'm laying down on a bench and this dude with a big mohawk walks by me and farts in my face. And I'm just like, of course this guy did this,
Dude.
I'm just like, oh my God. And it was so like, it was very blatant, it wasn't,
Yeah.
I was like, wow. But in my head, I'm like, but he doesn't know that I'm an alcoholic saving my life right now. Yeah. And this is a very beautiful moment that I even had the courage to be here right now. I'm so proud of myself. And I, repped out my lightweight, just trying to figure out how my body even worked, it was a long process. Yeah, man, that was the start of it all. It was very slow, present, humble beginnings, but all surrounded with this beautiful, encouraging narrative that all pertains to my relationship with myself. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like, man, I'll be stoked when I have a 6-pack. Like, hell no. It was like, I'm just stoked to be alive today and to love myself. And the byproduct of that was I got into the best shape of my life. And I learned so much in the process, being an emotional person and a communicator, that I could then start to help other people and say, hey, creative types tend to have these, indulgent patterns or be night owls or really neglect their body or neglect their diet. And they don't understand like how much that is just related to the state of their mental health and, well-being and everything. Like, dear God, I remember realizing all of my sad songs had come from espresso. Like, I would have a caffeine crash and find myself crying in a corner and be like, life, oh my God, the pain, it is so great. Oh, the weight of me, whoa. And I would play piano and cry and sob. And I'm like, it took years for me to realize, bro, it's because you're drinking too much caffeine. That you're just like, you're really not that sad. You're just crashing, you have a nervous system that can't handle it. And so it's like, switched to decaf and I was like, I feel oddly normal.
Wait a second, I can't write sad songs.
Yeah, I know. Oh, and trust me, like knowing that, there's times when I was like, time for a little stimulus and, just throw myself a curveball and later in the day be like, the sky is falling. Time to write a song.
Well, at least you knew you could trigger those things in positive ways to get results.
Absolutely.
So I would love your perspective on this really quick. So if I want you to throw the advice cap on real quick. So if somebody's listening to this who is in the spot, a lot of what we're talking about right now, where they're like, maybe I've tried to go to the gym, maybe I've tried to work out at home, I've tried to do these things, and the commitment, I don't know what it is. I just can't get it. I can't stick to a diet. Like that person, which I'm sure you get asked this stuff a lot at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk to that person for a second. What would you share? What are you sharing with those people when they ask you those things?
Hello, person listening right now. I am speaking to you, and I just want to let you know that I'm proud of you for even being receptive to the idea of change, for your well-being. And it's a great thing to invest in. A little bit is better than nothing at all. And, one of the big things that I dealt with was having to be perfect. And like, if I missed a day, I was like, well, I guess I'm never going back. And it's like, no. Just get back up, just go the next day or the next day after that. And, start small, get comfortable. Don't overcommit yourself. Here's my number one piece of advice. Change one thing at a time until it becomes habitual, until it becomes passive. For me, that was changing my diet. And I don't mean I did a crash diet. I mean, I just changed the way that I ate every day. It was like, okay, I'm going to, maybe smaller portions and probably have more clean protein and just like little changes that over a long period of time, I lost, weight that my body didn't want to be carrying and gained a level of discipline and understanding of how my body would respond to that. So I did that first until I didn't have to actively put energy into it, until I thought about it, or until I just naturally did it. And then I had the emotional strength and mental strength to then start to form another habit. So it's just these building blocks of habits. Step 1, do something for 3 weeks. Don't try to wake up at 7 a.m., go lift weights, go running, meditate, drink a smoothie and all of this when the day before you woke up at noon and had a pizza and whatever, nothing. And also, don't villainize food. That's the other big thing. Wow. Oh man, I get on people's cases about villainizing food. Food is great. Food is good. Listen to what your body wants though. Like your body is very smart. Our brains don't know our conscious, narrative doesn't know anything, our little intellect. So don't crash diet. Just change the way that you're eating, just in a way that you think is good and appropriate to you. And then when that becomes passive, then start to exercise. If that's the next thing on your boat, do that for 3 weeks, maybe go 3 times a week. Start small, 5 minutes on a treadmill, 5 minutes wandering around, wondering what the hell all the machines are, and then 5 minutes actually trying one out. Maybe try another one out. Maybe try another one out. Be there for 45 minutes. I don't know. Go home. Come back 2 days later. Do it again. And nobody there cares. Trust me. I'm one of those people. In fact, if you were to come up to most people at the gym and ask them for help, they would be so pumped. They'd be like, yeah, I'd love to help you out, bro. And you find less and less of those people at the gym nowadays anyways, that are your quote unquote meathead kind of type. It is great and it's exciting. And a lot of times people are happy to see new people there, and they're like, cool, this person is taking care of themselves in a way that I also have seen value in taking care of myself. I dig that. I want to help that person. So be open to it. Also, if you go to a box gym, don't let them give you a personal trainer for $200 a month. That's a ripoff. Go find somebody else. And the last little bit is, again, what I said at the beginning, if you miss a day, if you overindulge, if you sleep in, if you don't beat yourself up, you got to give yourself that grace, got to give yourself that patience, got to give yourself that forgiveness. And it's just about just like inviting these things to be a part of your life now, rather than saying, wow, I can't wait to quit going to the gym in 3 months when I've lost weight. It's like, no, it's like exercise is now a part of your life. And I don't mean you have to become a gym rat. I mean, go on a walk with your friends, go play Frisbee, go play volleyball. I don't know, go kayaking. Just get into your body, because your relationship with your body is beautiful and important, So that's kind of the starting place, I guess.
Man, that was wonderful, man. Hey, listen, folks, if you're still listening to this, like, don't turn us off if you go into the gym right now.
Yeah.
Keep listening. You can go to the gym, but keep listening to the rest of the show.
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
That.
I'm going to throw in a few extra things.
Do it.
Really quick.
Yeah.
You don't need to buy new workout shoes. You don't need to buy new workout gear in order to go. In fact, I discourage you from over-investing on the front end. Reward yourself on the back end. I do this thing every year that I have been working out consistently. I buy myself a new pair of workout shoes. That's like my reward to myself. And I'll never forget, after 1 year of going to the gym, taking a before and after picture that was 50 pounds different and just night and day of a person, I was like, I'm going to buy myself some wireless headphones, because I had been like running with wired headphones, and it was like, a brutal experience. But I was like, I don't know if I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm not going to invest in, $100 whatever wireless headphones. So you don't need to invest in tons of stuff to try to motivate yourself up front. Just get there, have the humility to know you're going to get sweaty and you're going to get uncomfortable and you're going to feel weak and you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated. Oh, it's so frustrating. I couldn't do a pull up for so long. And I made that a huge goal. And then one day I could do it. And it was, oh man, it was amazing. It was so rewarding. So just be excited for the process and let yourself get gross and laugh about it and come back a few days later and do it all again.
Beautiful. So. Love it, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we last left off in the timeline,
yeah, one
of the things you had mentioned is you were like, I want to move back to Ohio.
Yeah.
You were in a long-distance relationship, all that sort of stuff. So walk me through, and you can get as detailed or as just broad to get through the timeline as much as you want. Coming back to Ohio.
Yeah.
What was that like? Were you like, I want to do this? Or was it like, oh my gosh, I just don't know. Mm-hmm. So coming back home to Ohio, walk me through that.
Man, it was jarring. It was so jarring, The tempo of Columbus, Ohio versus Los Angeles is completely different. The way people socialize, completely different. The perspective on value of your kind of external identity, identifying in your career and relationships and all of these things, the way those things are perceived are all different too, So I had kind of gotten accustomed to the way things were in Los Angeles, which wasn't a lot of people here like to villainize the way people socialize in LA, but it's not bad. It's just different, and it's just it's proximity to entertainment. It's proximity to business. And that's why a lot of people are there. People aren't living in LA oh, I love raising my family in mid city and, whatever. It's no, we're a lot of people are there for their career, and that's just the truth. And a lot of people are in the Midwest because they're I was born and raised here and I'm going to raise my family here and I'm friends, family, barbecue on the weekends. And that's beautiful and that's wonderful. And that's one of the fun things to take to LA is show up and be I'm here to love you unconditionally. And they're going to be what's that like? Coming back to LA, coming back to Ohio, I moved back at the end of 2013 and, pick things, work through things with my girlfriend that was here at the time and wanted to get away from music. And, it was really weird. Man, I don't even know what necessarily to say about it because it was a lot of people, for some reason, when you move to LA from Ohio when you're young and doing art, they're oh yeah, my LA friend and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's it's like, oh, my friend knows somebody who babysits somebody who knows somebody that knows Weird Al. It's like this, it's like that kind of thing. And like you all of a sudden get into a chain of like, you become a part of that story in somebody else's life just because you live in Los Angeles. And like people think it's cool, at least that's the way it was like, 10 years ago. Now I don't give two shits where you live, it's like whatever. And the especially with like the internet and how everything works now, but I moved back here and I wanted to start a speakeasy here in Columbus, and I had so much, like, wanted to get a nice loft and all of this, but ultimately, like, my depression just chased me down, and I was like, I'm actually just gonna go work at Starbucks, and just chill. So that was, it was jarring, and had to embrace some of that humility, but also it was really like sweet and wonderful to be back surrounded by like the people I grew up with and people that I love and be near my family. And that was always kind of so much of, so here's the thing. Ever since I was little, if you were to ask me what my like goal in life was, I would always say it's to have a cookout, or it's to have a barbecue. And in that, I'm basically communicating that I would like to be at a place where I can provide a space and provide like food and provide love for my community. Like, that's what I want. It's what I want in life. And then I found that as the more and more I pushed into my career and chasing down this success, the more and more my relationships suffered, and I was like, wow, I'm trying so hard to like win the jackpot of life so that then I can come back and spoil these people. But here I am abandoning them today. What is happening? It's this weird duality. And so coming back from LA, I was just like, oh my God. It was just like, it was so beautiful to just get coffee with everybody all the time. I was just like, oh, I love you and be a part of your life and, all that kind of stuff. So, and that's kind of been the back and forth, because that's still my goal, and I just want to, I just want to love and provide a space of motivation, inspiration, nourishment, healing, and all that.
So a part that you shared earlier, you mentioned you wrote a book and became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay. So we're, always been an entrepreneur. When I was like a little kid, it's like I would be like 10 years old and grab a bucket and a wagon and go wash cars. And then I would come home and like throw up a lemonade stand. And then I would like put some things out in the yard and say, these are for sale too. Do you want to buy these? Just like always hustling. But yeah, so I had always been a songwriter. I've always been a storyteller, creatively, and had always written poetry, mostly for people I was dating, and just to kind of express whatever kind of weird linear progression of words were taking place in my imagination, reflecting some vague thing. And so I was on tour and talking to my friend Ashley, who I mentioned earlier that I met in sixth grade at Tree of Life, that I started this poetry publishing company with. And she was talking about finishing her book, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to finish my book too. Let's do it. Like, let's finish our books finally. Let's put out poetry books, And so then like a few days later, it's like, hey, what if we like branded them together, like put the same logo on it? And then a few days later, it's like, what if we did it with other people's books too? And what if we did like subscription boxes and like this whole thing? And we started to build this whole brand. And I'll never forget like being in the tour van, like bumping on the road and sketching out like logo ideas, which I now have tattooed on my arm. And oh my gosh, it was so funny. We got home and threw up a Splash website where people could pre-order, and we were like, cool, we got 2 weeks to finish our books and put all this out. And just like, we just went for it and we did it. And it was like, came down to the wire, and it was amazing. And, one thing I will say that was like really probably the most rewarding part about putting out a book was, one is like on a bucket list, like put out a book. That's fun. What I loved the most about the experience was, what came out of the experience was, in the editing process, looking at my poetry, there were some really dark poems, and I went to multiple people and I was like, should I take these out? Is this too much? And I decided no. No matter what anybody said, I didn't. Some of them said yes, definitely. Some said, yeah, no, I don't know. It's your book, and I kept all of them in there, and those all ended up being the poems that people would bring back to me or message me about and say, this is the one that made me feel less alone. This is the one that spoke to me. This is the one I identified with, or like, it started to reveal to me this process of understanding the relationship between vulnerability and healing. And, like, being vulnerable is powerful. It's incredibly powerful, So that was massive for me to witness and understand and participate in. So
that is okay. So there are so many things that you've explained in this conversation that I'm like, I want to do that too. Like,
yeah,
so
do it.
It's just
do all of
funny to hear someone else explain all these things and just figure them out and just do them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like literally, like I don't even know what it would be.
Yeah,
but it's the same thing. I have that on like my quote unquote bucket list. It's
yeah.
like I would love to make a book.
Yeah,
I would love to write a book.
Yeah,
I would love to make a children's book.
Hell
like,
yeah.
Yeah, like I have those just random things that I'm like, I would really love to do that. But I feel like hearing somebody explain, like, yeah, I wanted to do something and I just did it. Like, that's it. You're giving me positive reinforcement right now. Like, yeah, this stuff, it does make sense to just want to do some random stuff sometimes because if you can find meaning in it or purpose in it of just creating it, like, that is one thing that I feel like I consistently battle with is, we talked about this earlier, of the blessing and the curse. Like, I just feel like I almost want to create too much.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, am I spreading myself too thin because I'm wanting to do this and that thing over here and this, and even though I find ways to grow and accomplish each of them, I consistently have an inner battle with myself, as I'm sure a lot of people do in a multitude of ways, of like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, am I deterring myself from the more important thing, or who is to determine what is the most important thing other than yourself, obviously? But it's just funny to hear those examples, because that's a battle I have with myself all the time, where I'm like, dude, you just need to stop coming up with ideas. like I think that all the time, and honestly beat myself up over it sometimes. Like, is that like, have you been there? Have you felt that? Like, are you like, dude, like I think too much, or
so this gets into something that, so I was when we were sound checking, I was talking about how I was on the phone until 6 a.m. last night or this morning, and part of that conversation was somebody saying, you need to pick one thing and do that with 100% of you. That's what you got to do. And because exactly what you just said, lately I've had a million ideas since I was a child, and I feel like each one it's like a little string, and I throw it over my shoulder, and it's tied onto a little sack, and I'm dragging it. And at this point, at age 31, I have had, you can ask, I mean, anybody in the proximity of my life, I've had a million ideas, and one day I will show up and be like, yeah, so I just decided I'm starting this restaurant. This is the menu, and I'll show them a picture, and I'll be like, and this is the design, and this is how we serve, and on Mondays we do this, and on Fridays we do that, and don't worry, there's also a speakeasy in the back, and here's all the branding for that, and here's all this, and also I'm taking salsa lessons, and also, oh my God, it's so crazy, I've been teaching myself yo-yo tricks. And then the next day, people will be like, so what's up with that bar thing you're starting? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Sorry. I've been working on this graphic novel, and I don't know, learning Spanish. Yeah, really thinking about that. I think I might move to France, though, so maybe I'm going to learn French. I don't know. And it is, as you, I'm sure you know, it's exhausting. It is exhausting, and it is daunting as soon as you begin to approach one of these ideas, because you are living in a barrage of ideas and excitement and all of this. I think they are all things that can and want to come out of you. I wish I could live a million lives and do all of these things, you know? It's the big thing I'm trying to learn. The big lesson I've had the past few months has been to surrender and to shed. And I think part of that is pertaining to, like I was saying, feeling indebted to things of my past. And a lot of that and what I've experienced in shedding and letting go of over the past few years and through my 20s and all of that has been like things that have affected my life dramatically, you know, whether it's like identifying in some sort of victim mentality or, you know, relationships or blah, 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 blah. But the thing now is ideas. Letting go of ideas, to me, is the most horrifying, violent crime against myself. And I'm realizing I have to do it. I have to let them go, you know? It's like, I'm not going to get to start 30 restaurants. You know, I'm not going to get to write 100 books that are ranging from children's books to graphic novels to trilogies of sci-fi to takes on history to, you know, art manifestos. And, you know, I'm not going to start 30 clothing brands, you know, and all of these things. And one thing that I have realized, I'm like, these things don't have to exist physically. I've realized lately, I was like, they can exist in stories. And so I'm now trying to like kind of go through and collect all of these things, and I want to salvage them and put them into short stories and be like, there's a character who goes to this bar and this bar is like this. And that's where I can just, the graveyard of my dreams exists through probably a world that's much more vivid, a lot less expensive, and anybody can visit at any time because it exists in the imagination.
Yeah.
You know, so trying to put them to rest in that way.
Right.
Know,
I
so.
feel like I need to hear that.
Yeah, take it.
I genuinely cannot explain how similar I feel like we are in that sense. Like, I overthink ideas every single day, and I will do the same thing where it's like, obviously, fortunately, for tons of reasons, but unfortunately, I know how to take photos and do video and also graphic design. Yeah. So, like, anytime I come up with an idea, there's a lot of times I'm just like,
the whole package.
I can just, like, make the whole branding set. Like, I'll come up with an idea for a company or a brand.
Yeah.
And if it's, like, 2 a.m. and I'm trying to go to sleep and I'm thinking of it, I'm just like, well, I'll get up real quick and just go to Photoshop and, like, design. Something I have noticed, though, is, like, I just actually posted about this the other day. I have understood sometimes. I guess I am learning how to let those ideas go. Mm-hmm. As much as I still battle with that, and I hear you say that, and I'm like, oh man, you're so right. Like, I think I'm slowly learning that because I've also learned how much energy maybe an idea does need.
Oh God, yeah.
So, reason to be bringing that up is like the whole like, you know, get up at 2 a.m. and design on Photoshop for a company idea that I'm imagining at that moment.
Yeah.
I have slowly noticed that sometimes it is just the act of I needed to create that and take it from my brain and make it sort of exist in reality. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that sometimes that's enough for me.
Totally.
I don't know if you've ever felt that.
Yeah,
like,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Where, yes, I'm not totally... So if I'm thinking of a restaurant idea, sometimes just going and designing a pitch deck of a branding layout of what the restaurant could look like.
Yeah.
A lot of the same things you said. Like, I could lay all that out and just toss it in like a Dropbox folder and be like, I'll just save that for later idea, whatever. Usually I'm like, that's actually kind of all I need. I've now cleaned the idea out of my head.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
I'm not waking up the next day and I'm like, I have to learn how to open a restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, I have found slight satisfaction in like, you know what? It stopped being an idea.
Yeah.
And it was put into the world, at least in a small way. Mm-hmm. Great. I kind of saw it exist.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't really want to actually start a restaurant.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of just see it in the real world. Like, I've learned that that's like a subtle trick.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
getting ideas out of my brain and just being like, well, I'll do a version of it.
Right.
And actually, that was kind of satisfying. I don't need to go any further than that. Like, I'm good now.
Yeah.
But then the hard part is it's good that I get that idea out, but I have now made more room in my brain for the next wave of ideas. So the next day, it's like, well, yeah, that restaurant thing you didn't need, but what about an ice cream shop? You didn't think about that.
An ice cream truck,
Yeah.
but like with dancers. I don't know, just some absurd combination.
Exactly.
Oh,
Ever thought about turning your podcast into a food truck? You haven't, but now you know, like you need to.
That's
like,
a fucking great idea.
I mean, we can design stuff
let's
after we stop
go.
recording. Like we can do.
Oh my god.
Okay,
Oh
so
my god.
one of the big things that I would love to get your perspective on is, through this entire journey that we've talked about thus far, and I'm sure there's so many details we're missing, and then so many just things. I know we could make this like a 6-hour show.
Yeah.
Through that entire journey,
Yeah.
do you feel like and we're going to dive off, we're going to go from fun ideas into maybe a dive off the deep end here.
Cool.
Whether it's like faith-based or just you as an individual, whatever it is, do you feel like you have understood, and I'm not asking like the key to life question. I'm not saying like you have to say yes.
Yeah.
But in a roundabout way, do you feel like you have understood like what your purpose is? Mm-hmm. And I ask that not of like, are you changing the world?
Yeah.
But more so, you love to create. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm asking this again for maybe even explanation so I can understand myself a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like, you love to just make and create opportunities for yourself and just say yes to a lot of things and take opportunities and move and make music and this thing and that thing. And like, have you identified any of that as I am supposed to like make, I am supposed to build, like, and I'm not asking you for a job position that you're supposed to do, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. This is actually hilarious, the timing of all of this, because I don't know if you're into tarot cards at all.
Not enough to be like, yes, let's
talk about tarot cards. So, kind of getting into your esoteric and divination and, all things God and et cetera. Long story short, I feel like my purpose is to be a teacher and healer. That's what I want to do. And part of that has I look at every experience that I've become obsessed and immersed in, and it has equipped me with an understanding and a knowledge and an actual tangible experience of myself being in positions in order to be able to take those things, and I want to begin to build a world and a place, a spiritual center. I don't even know it would be a spiritual center. That sounds funny, but like just starting off with like, what does the environment look like that I can build and create? What are the colors? What are the sounds? What are the practices like? Because even if you're not religious, being invited into a space of vulnerability and reflection is incredibly powerful. It's like therapy, essentially. Like a lot of people meditate for mental discipline, and they completely don't associate it with anything spiritual. Then there's people that do it for completely spiritual reasons, and I'm trying to kind of meet that in the middle, where it's like, what is a place that I can encourage people to just sit quietly and really listen to their intuition and just go deep and heal and be seen and be listened to, and something communal. I don't know. It's manifesting right now in my life, or it's starting to take shape, I guess, just what I want to do. But this is kind of hilarious. How much time do we have?
As much as you want.
I'll make this brief. So, butterfly's been my like big symbol lately, and I was in line for like Robex right before getting on my plane, and there's a guy with a butterfly tattooed on his arm, and he's wearing a shirt that says Coach really big, and I was like, this goes exactly with me wanting to be like some sort of like I don't know, like a spiritual teacher or therapist or life coach, something that is an amalgamation of those things, and then I go to Tulum, and I do this ceremony, cacao ceremony, and I'm obviously like a white dude from the Midwest and whatever, but I'm there to like I want to engage in these spiritual experiences, and I basically had found this one through somebody, and it was it was not a tourist version of the ceremony. It was an actual like ceremony, and I'm locked eyes with the shaman that's leading this ceremony, and she's just staring at me, and she keeps saying this blessing at me, and she didn't speak English, and I was just like, whoa, we're having this like connection, something's going on. She comes over to me, and she's like, you're a teacher, like you should be leading these ceremonies. You should you're done being a student here. It's time for you to turn around and teach. And I was like, well, this is exactly what I was thinking, blah. And then I was like, I want to go find a Spanish tarot deck because I like have a collection of tarot decks. Like I got one in Paris, and anyways, just like a collection from when I travel. So I'm like driving past this shop where I thought I could buy one, and it's closed. And right as I'm driving past this shop, I get this vision of this like very LA coffee shop. And mind you, like Tulum, everything is kind of bungalow treehouse style. And I was like, I haven't seen an LA style coffee shop here yet. But I turned the corner, and sure enough, right there, it's this LA, big porcelain kind of looking coffee shop, gorgeous. And I was like, oh, that's it. It's also a library or a bookstore. I was like, that's my thing. So I walk in, grab a poetry book, and I'm sitting there reading it. And there's this guy that just stands out to me across the room. And I was like, I'm supposed to talk to him. And I was like, I'm going to wait. And then he pulls out a tarot deck, and I was like, there it is. I walk over to him. I was like, hey, man, when I walked in here, I knew I was supposed to talk to you, and I'm on this journey to find a tarot deck, and I saw you pull out this deck, and, et cetera, et cetera. And he was like, oh, it's crazy. When you walked in, I texted my friend that, like, a healer walked in, and he shows me this text he sent his friend. He's like, yeah, we're totally supposed to talk. And he does this reading for me and spread, and it's totally right on with everything, like, kind of taking place in my life. And I walk out, and this voice in my head is like, you need to walk halfway down the block. I was like, no, I need to go home. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll walk. And so like I walk, and I go into the shop, and I was like, okay, this is it. Something's in here for me. And I've been wanting to get into doing like sound bath ceremonies and stuff like that. It was essentially just like, giant resonating frequencies, great for meditation. And, they're so chill. If you've never done a sound bath, you got to come. And there's like these Tibetan chimes in the back, and I was like, oh, these are fun. And I'm sitting there just like totally chiming out in the back of the thing, like listening to them, just like seeing which frequency. I was like, okay, this is the one I want to buy. And the woman at the shop is just staring at me, and I was like, hey, do you have tarot cards? She's like, I'm no witch. And she's like, but I do like these ceremonies in this like cave, blah, 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 blah. It's called like a Tezemecal, like a sweat lodge ceremony, kind of thing. And I was like, whoa. And we're talking about like the spiritual energy of Tulum and all of this stuff. And she starts just giving me all these affirmations. And then I buy this chime. And as she reaches into this bowl of crystals, she's like, here, take this. And she hands me this little crystal. And when she hands it to me, I start to like taste honey in my throat. And I was like, whoa. And it feels like my throat's opening up. And she goes, this is for your throat chakra to open. And I was like, crazy, because it's happening right now. And then she comes around, and she just embraces me. We just held each other for like 5 minutes. And it was just like this, like, it felt like hugging like family, it was beautiful. And it was just all like affirming to like this wanting to pursue being a spiritual teacher, essentially.
Yeah.
It's just like, because part of that comes in understanding emotion and understanding the physical body and understanding like spiritual nature and all of these places that I've journeyed and been in and fallen in love with, and I've carried the full weight of my life in different seasons. And now it's like, okay, now it's time to bring them all together. And how do we save some lives,
Yeah.
So,
dude, I'm about to just follow you around every day just so I can experience some of these things. That sounds incredible.
And you know what? If you did, you would witness them. I want that to sound arrogant, but I have people in my life that are just close enough that like they witness these things happen, and it's just and it's inspiring, and it's encouraging, and it's not me. It's just being open to it. It's all around us. It is right here, and it's in you, and it's awesome. And I'm sure there's a reason I'm on this podcast right now. Like there is going to be something that blossoms from this for you and for me and for people that hear it. And it is the beautiful dance that we are all in, as long as you're open to it.
Yeah. Well, dude, when you open
Yeah.
your spiritual healing center,
Yeah.
please let me know.
Oh, 100%.
Because I will be there opening day.
Hell yeah.
1,000,000%.
Yeah, yeah.
So last couple things here
Okay.
before we like officially kind of wrap up, because I literally feel like the amount of just stories and everything, like this could be a 10-hour podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
Oh, yeah.
I just know that there are things that we haven't even covered that are probably worth covering, but it's just going to take like a whole other episode.
Oh, you're good.
What I would love to hear from you and your perspective on is, if somebody's listening to this and they're hearing all these different things and we're talking about purpose and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I know this is a very bland question, but I know you're going to have some amazing things to say.
Thanks.
If somebody's listening to this and they don't feel like they understand their purpose, and again, not the one thing they should do with their life or anything like that,
Yeah.
but they don't feel the direction, they don't understand, they're lost in their job, they're lost in their day-to-day life, they're not feeling what's around them, whatever it is, they just feel sort of lost. And they're like, you guys are talking about creating all these things and I just don't know, like I don't feel that. Like, what do you say to that person?
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, like you're saying, there is a common association between purpose and destiny. Very different things. Purpose is a now thing. Destiny is something that some kind of deep-rooted idea of ourselves we're in love with and we want to pursue, and or something completely out of our control. They're very different. Purpose. A spoon has a purpose. It was made, to spoon things out, and you can use a spoon for plenty of things. You can use a spoon to peel open a paint can that's stuck and then use it to stir the paint and all of this, but you're never going to find out how that spoon works most efficiently until it starts to get used, and one of my favorite kind of pictures of this is a boat's not going to move unless you set the sails, so if you're listening right now and you are feeling lost and kind of devoid, start doing something. And if it's not the right thing, you're going to know really quickly. And then you try something else. And the excitement is that process and discovery and all of that. And also asking yourself, what do I love? How am I wired? Learning about yourself really helps you discover this idea of purpose easy. So you just be like, oh man, I really love talking to people and I really love soccer. Maybe I should talk to people about soccer in some way and look for a job. It's like, maybe I'll do tickets at a stadium or something, or, just gravitate towards what your heart is saying and, your intuition and all of these things. And you're not gonna kill it out the gate. That's just not how it works, because it's also going to change all the time as you change. So it's kind of my advice: set the sails and just go and discover your North Star by asking yourself what you love and what you love right now. What do you have? Like, one of the things I like to get into is, what are you zealous for? What do you have, perpetually more energy for right now in your life than other things? For me, the past few years, it's been exercise. Like, if I just finished up like 2 hours at the gym and somebody's like, hey, you want to come train me at the gym? I'm like, hell yeah, I'm turning my car around right now. Let's go, But if it's like, hey, do you want to I don't know, do paperwork with me? And I'm like, absolutely not. I have no energy for that, But there's some people that love crunching numbers. They're just like, yeah, man, numbers, that's my shit, So it's like, what are you zealous for? Like, what do you have energy for? And that is a great place to also begin and move yourself. So,
okay, so I want to ask you this as well.
Yes.
Even further off the deep end here, okay?
Go deep.
Looking back at your journey thus far.
Yeah.
And we might have already talked about it. Mm-hmm. But looking back, everything you've been through, what do you feel like was the most difficult part that you had to push through? And then how did you accomplish that? How did you get through it? How are you still sitting right here? How are you able to be sitting across the table from me right now?
Man, Not to put too many descriptive terms to it, but there's been lots of times when I shouldn't be sitting here, and it's the crucible of loneliness every time, and the feeling like abandonment and loneliness. It's those things, and especially when it's centered around a broken relationship with self too. Anytime that I've found myself stuck in the bonds of addiction and just crying out for help, and help doesn't come. I have this poem, and there's a part in it that says, who will save me but myself, and it's always been loneliness. So coming out of that, wow, it's it's essentially holding on through a storm, because things change, and you gotta exert a little bit of energy, but sometimes the only energy you have is just to hold on, so that's all. When it gets that bad, that's the hardest part, when it's like, okay, I have to use 100% of me just to get out of bed and go to the bathroom today. So yeah, and that's usually, like I said, kind of concurrent to addiction. So yeah.
Okay. Last big question for you.
Okay, yeah.
I end every episode of this show the same way, same question.
Yeah.
So right now, I want you to pretend like we've been talking to people throughout the show, right? We've been tossing out some advice left and right.
Yeah.
But right now, I want you to pretend like everyone in the world, languages don't matter, where they are, it does not matter. Everyone in the world is attached to you on the other end of that microphone, and they can hear the words you're speaking. What is it that you're sharing with the entire world? What are you telling them?
Smash that like button.
And see.
Oh God. Sorry. I just
the best. Most people are like, I need to think about this for a second. You're just on it. You're on
Smash that like button. Oh
and
my.
That's why Disney contacts me and not other people.
I'm sweating.
Incredible.
Man, that's a massive one. The amount of times I've rehearsed some kind of award ceremony speech in my head,
Yeah.
Oh, and man, that's massive. I wish I could take hours to think about it. But I think one of the big things is there's oh God, there's my head is going deep into we live in this system where there's all this strange social value that doesn't have to exist, and we can exist in an economy of love, and shed your ego, slow down, look around you, be grateful, not you are part of nature, and life is a beautiful, beautiful opportunity, and it's gonna end someday for you, and you should just soak it up right now. You don't have to die with the most things. It's not that game. It's an old thing me and my friends used to laugh about. It's whoever dies with the most stuff wins. It's not the game. It's not how it works. You can't take it with you. And you would be so surprised in what you cherish in giving rather than receiving. And what you would learn about yourself and the world and people if you would just take a breath, slow down. So something in that category. I don't know.
I love it.
I don't know.
That was great.
It's Yeah, wish I could talk to the whole world for like an hour.
Listen, you come back on the show, and I won't speak the whole time. I'll just be like, all right, Jesse, what do you want to tell the world? And go. And I'll just chill back here, and then you can just talk to the world.
Oh, man. Time. Yeah.
Dude, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thanks so much.
Am so very glad that we finally have met.
Yeah,
after
absolutely.
I feel like just like being just one turn away at all times.
Right.
I genuinely believe we are supposed to know each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I believe that.
Absolutely.
And I am glad we have finally made it happen. And I'm glad that our first meeting was recorded for a bunch of people to watch and listen to.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing all that you did.
Thank you.
I really, really do.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we completely wrap up here,
get
the finality to everything.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to find you around the internet, we're talking about, connecting, got to go to that. If they want to go smash a like button somewhere, where can they find you around the internet for fitness journey, for art, for anything, whatever you want people to go check out or what you would love to connect with people on? Where can they find you?
Onlyfans.com. I'm half kidding. You know what? I don't update a lot of my social media anymore. I could talk about a relationship with social media for a whole episode, but if you would like to contact me, Instagram at Jessie Cale, JessieCale. Send me a message or follow me, whatever. This is the best way to reach me, probably, or email me. Contact jessiecale@gmail.com.
Or just maybe I feel like somebody maybe could step outside and just kind of think in their mind, like, where's Jessie Cale? And I feel like there's a good chance they might be led right to you.
100%. Yes. I knew I was going to be on this podcast, and I knew you were going to hit me up.
There it is.
So it was like maybe a week ago it popped into my mind. I was like, oh, that Ross guy's going to hit me up and we're going to do the podcast. And then sure enough, he did.
I love that. And we freaking made it happen.
Yeah.
And I love that we did. Dude, thank you so much, man.
Of course.
That was
this was fun.
All right, there it is. That was it. Another one in the books. If you liked what you heard here today, please do what Jessie asked of all of you at the end of this episode and smash that MF and AF like button. And of course, while you're there, elbow drop the subscribe button for me as well. And better than that, if you want to keep spreading the word, spreading the positive energy or whatever it is this show made or makes you feel if you're an avid listener, one of the best things you can do for me aside from subscribing and leaving a good review is sharing this on your social, telling your friends about it. I see it all the time nowadays. Tons of people are always asking for podcast recommendations, and it's always awesome when I see someone tagging me or the show and recommending this one. That is a super good feeling, and it helps out a lot. It's the power of word of mouth, folks. It's a big one right now. It still works, and the only way I'm keeping this show growing, to be honest. So help me out if you'd like. I don't have any big secret money pit sponsors helping me make this happen. It's a one-man band over here, so any and all help is welcome. So if you dig what I'm doing here, if you dig the guests like the wonderful Jessie Cale or anybody else on these episodes that you connect with or learn something from the stories that they share, let someone know about it. Or you can let me know by following or tagging me around the internet at Who's Ross Tyson. And of course, following and tagging the show at WYDH Pod all around the interwebs. So that'll do it. There's the plugs and promotions. It's seriously much appreciated from my standpoint to any and all of you for checking this show out, whether it's your first episode that you've listened to or the 36th or whatever it may be. I seriously appreciate it. I thank you so very much. And realistically, even if there's just 3 of you out there listening to this show, I don't really see myself not doing this show regardless of the number because I truly love having these conversations. So whether you're liking, whether you're subscribing, sharing, tagging, or none of it at all, I'll be back next episode having another fun conversation with someone you may or may not know of, sharing a story that you for sure never heard.